I want you to imagine a quiet morning, the kind of morning where the air is soft, the sky is calm, and the world feels like it is waiting for you to take your first step. And as you breathe in and breathe out, you feel this gentle excitement rising inside you because today you are starting a new journey, a journey not just to understand English and not just to speak it better, but to use English in a powerful way, a persuasive way. A way that helps you communicate your thoughts clearly and confidently, and as you hear my voice, you begin to picture yourself standing in a small room with warm light around you, a room where people gather to share ideas, stories, and dreams, and you are standing there with them, holding a message you want the world to understand. But before you speak, something inside you hesitates, maybe fear, maybe uncertainty, maybe the feeling that someone else will communicate better than you, but not today. Because today you learn the art of persuasive speaking, and you learn it slowly, gently, step by step. You begin by listening, really listening, because the heart of persuasive speaking is not big words or complex sentences, but clarity, rhythm, emotion, and connection. And as I speak to you now, you feel yourself opening to this idea. The idea that persuasion is not pressure but connection, not force but understanding, not shouting but speaking softly with purpose. So let us take this first step together in this long story, this long journey through English, through sounds and feelings and ideas, and we begin with a person, an ordinary person, someone very much like you, someone who has always wanted to speak with confidence, someone who dreamed of expressing ideas that matter, someone who knows that words can change a room, change a conversation, maybe even change a life. This person's name is Aaron, and I want you to picture him walking through a quiet street early in the morning, just before the sun fully rises. The street is empty except for a few birds moving between the trees, and Aaron carries a small notebook in his hand, the same notebook he carries every morning. Inside it, he writes thoughts, ideas, questions, hopes, anything he wants to say but sometimes does not say because the right words do not come easily. He dreams of being persuasive, not to manipulate people, but to share his ideas in a way that others understand, trust, and feel. And every morning he opens this notebook, hoping today will be the day he finally finds the voice he has been searching for. As he walks, he thinks about the speech he has to give at work in a few days, a small presentation about a project he believes in so deeply, a project he knows could help people, but the thought of speaking in front of others makes his hands shake just a little. He knows his English is good, but he does not feel powerful when he speaks. He does not feel persuasive. He does not feel like his voice can carry his idea the way it should. But something is different this morning, something small but important. Today, he decides he will not run away from the challenge anymore. He will face it. He will learn to persuade, to engage, to connect, and to speak in a way that makes people want to listen. So he stops walking, sits on a bench, and closes his eyes. And when he closes his eyes, he begins to imagine the room where he will speak. He imagines the people sitting there, waiting to hear his ideas. He imagines the nervous feeling in his chest. But then something surprising happens. Instead of pulling away from the fear, Aaron leans into it. He asks himself a simple question: what do I really want to say? And this question becomes the beginning of everything. He suddenly realizes something that will stay with him throughout his journey. Persuasion starts before you speak. Persuasion starts with knowing what you truly believe. And as he breathes slowly, his thoughts settle, and for the first time, he feels that maybe he can do this. He opens his eyes and begins to walk again, this time with more purpose in his steps. But Aaron's journey is not just his. It becomes yours too. The moment you listen to his story, the moment you follow his steps, you begin to learn the same lessons he learns. Lessons about clarity, about emotion, about rhythm, about the power of simple English spoken with confidence. And As Aaron continues down the quiet street, he remembers something his old teacher once told him. Persuasion is not about speaking to people. It is about speaking with people. And the same is true for you. When you speak English, you are not performing. You are connecting. You are sharing. You are guiding someone gently to understand your point of view. And when you understand this, speaking becomes easier, lighter, more natural. Aaron reaches a small cafe at the end of the street, a cozy place with warm lights, wooden tables, and the gentle smell of freshly baked bread. He orders his usual cup of tea and sits by the window with his notebook open in front of him. He begins to write again, but this time, instead of writing the perfect sentence, he writes the real sentence, the true sentence, the sentence that expresses what he feels. And the sentence is simple. I want to help people see what I see. When he writes those words, something opens inside him, something soft and honest. He realizes that persuasion is not about trying to win. It is about trying to share. And you, listening to this story now, begin to feel the same understanding. You begin to feel that persuasive English does not require complicated words. It requires honest words spoken clearly, slowly, and with intention. And just then, as Aaron sips his tea, an old friend named Maya walks into the cafe. She sees him sitting alone with his notebook and smiles. Maya is the kind of person who speaks with warmth, the kind of person who makes people feel safe when she talks. She walks over, sits down across from him, and asks what he is writing. Aaron hesitates, embarrassed to say he is practicing for a presentation, but Maya notices his hesitation and encourages him gently. She tells him it is normal to feel nervous, it is normal to want to express yourself better, and she reminds him of a truth he had forgotten. People don't listen to perfect English, she says softly. They listen to meaningful English. And when Maya says that, he feels something shift inside him again. He begins to share his fears, his hopes, his worries. And as he talks, she listens, really listens, and he realizes how powerful listening is in communication. Maya then offers to help him practice. She tells him to explain his project, the project he will present. At first, Aaron's voice shakes, his sentences break, and his ideas feel messy. But Maya does not interrupt. She lets him speak. She lets him explore. And as he continues, something magical happens. The more he talks, the more the ideas come together. The more he explains, the clearer his message becomes. And when he finishes, Maya smiles again and tells him something that will shape his entire journey. Your ideas are strong, she says. But your voice does not believe them yet. And when you hear that, you might feel the same about yourself sometimes. You know your ideas. You know your feelings. But your voice hesitates. Your voice feels unsure. So as Aaron sits quietly, thinking about her words, you also begin to reflect on your own voice, your own confidence, your own desire to communicate clearly in English. Maya then teaches him a simple exercise. She asks him to say his main idea again, but this time slowly, with more breath, with more intention. She asks him to say it the way he would say it to someone he cares about, someone he wants to understand him. And when Aaron tries again, his voice becomes softer but stronger, slower but clearer, and even he is surprised at how different it sounds. He realizes that persuasion begins with slow speech, not fast speech. It begins with calm, not pressure. And as you listen, you begin to understand the same truth. You begin to imagine yourself practicing your English in the same way, slowly, intentionally, honestly. And as the cafe fills with more people and the morning grows brighter, Aaron begins to feel something he has not felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. Hope that he can learn this. Hope that he can speak in a way people understand. Hope that he can share his ideas clearly and confidently. And maybe you feel that same hope too, the quiet kind that sits inside your chest and whispers, "You can do this." He gets up from the table, thanks Maya, and steps outside again. The air is warmer now, and the street is busier. People walk by, talking, laughing, sharing small moments of their lives. And as Aaron walks through the crowd, he listens. He listens to how people speak, how they use simple words, how they pause, how they breathe, how they express emotion even in short phrases. And he realizes that persuasion is everywhere, happening in every moment, not in dramatic speeches, but in small conversations. And you realize that too now. You begin to hear English differently in your mind. Not as a school subject, not as grammar, not as rules, but as connection, as music, as rhythm. And as the day moves forward, Aaron returns home feeling a little stronger. He stands in front of his mirror and decides to practice again. He speaks slowly, clearly, gently. He watches his own face, watches how nervous he still feels, but also sees the spark of confidence growing. And with every sentence he speaks, he feels a little more sure of himself. And this becomes your takeaway for this first part of the journey. Persuasive speaking is not a talent. It is a practice. It is something you grow every day, little by little. And as the sun begins to set outside Aaron's window, he closes his notebook for the day, feeling grateful for small progress, feeling ready for what comes next. And now, as you breathe in and breathe out, you prepare yourself too, because this is only the beginning of the long, powerful story you and Aaron will continue together. This is the beginning of your journey toward persuasive speaking, toward strong English, toward confident communication. And tomorrow, the story will continue, and you will follow Aaron into deeper understanding, deeper practice, deeper mastery, step by gentle step, until his voice and your voice grow into strong, calm, persuasive English that feels natural, warm, and real. When the next morning comes, it arrives gently, with soft light touching the edge of Aaron's curtains, and he wakes up slowly, feeling the fresh air move through his room as if the world is inviting him to take the next step in his journey. A journey that is now becoming a little clearer in his mind, and as he stretches his arms and sits on the side of his bed, he thinks about everything that happened yesterday, the quiet walk, the warm cafe, Maya's calm voice, the realization that persuasion is not about being perfect, but about being honest and intentional. And as he remembers this, he feels a small strength growing inside him, a quiet strength, like a seed beginning to open. He walks to the window and looks outside at the busy street below. People are already moving quickly, children walking to school, workers rushing for buses, shopkeepers opening their doors. Their voices come together in small waves of sound, soft conversations flowing across the morning air, and as Aaron listens, he notices something he never paid attention to before: the rhythm of speech. He hears how people pause naturally, how their voices rise when they are excited, how they soften when they are unsure, how they slow down when they want someone to understand something clearly. He realizes that even in the simple conversations happening outside his window, there is a natural music, a gentle flow, and he suddenly understands something important. Persuasion is not only about the words you choose. It is about the rhythm you create when you speak. English, he thinks, is not only a language. It is a sound, a movement, a dance. This idea stays in his mind as he gets ready for the day. He brushes his teeth, washes his face, ties his shoes, all while thinking about this rhythm, this natural music people use without even noticing. And as he thinks about it, he realizes he wants to master that music too. He wants to speak in a way that flows, a way that feels calm but powerful, a way that guides people gently to his meaning. So he grabs his notebook and decides to take a longer walk today, a walk not just to think, but to listen, really listen, to how English lives in the world. As he steps outside, he feels the sunlight warming his face, and he begins walking down the street with a quiet curiosity rising inside him. He walks past a small bakery where the smell of fresh bread and warm pastries fills the air, and he hears two workers talking softly as they shape dough on a wooden table. Their English is simple, practical, but full of feeling. He hears how one of them says, "Not like that, like this," using his tone to guide, not just his words. And in that moment, Aaron realizes tone is everything. The same sentence can feel completely different depending on how your voice moves. And he thinks, this is persuasion. This small moment, this simple correction, it is persuasion too. Because persuasion is everywhere. He continues walking, passing by a park where a group of older people are doing slow morning exercises, moving their arms gently in the air. They talk while they move, laughing softly, encouraging each other. Their words are easy, slowly, yes, that's right, good job. And again Aaron notices the rhythm, the patience, the warmth. Their English feels like a soft stream moving over stones. And he thinks persuasive English is not loud English. Persuasive English is gentle, patient English. English that listens while it speaks. The more he observes, the more he understands. Persuasion is not about pushing people, it is about inviting them. So he walks deeper into the park and sits on a bench beneath a large tree whose leaves rustle quietly in the wind. He closes his eyes and lets the sounds settle around him. He listens to the wind, the birds, the distant conversations, the hum of a bus passing by. And then he hears his own breath. Slow, steady, soft. And for a moment, he forgets his nervousness, his fear, his presentation, everything. He simply listens. And in this quiet moment, something unexpected happens. He realizes that listening is not only the beginning of persuasive speaking, it is the center of it. And maybe you feel that too now. Maybe as you listen to this narration, you begin to notice your own breath, your own rhythm, your own desire to understand and be understood. Because persuasive English is not learned through force. It is learned through presence. After sitting for some time, Aaron opens his notebook and starts to write down the sounds he hears and how they make him feel. He writes words like soft, slow, warm, clear, and then he writes a sentence that surprises him. Persuasion is the music of connection. He smiles at this because it feels true, even though he does not fully understand it yet. But he will. And you will too. Because this part of the journey is about understanding the hidden music inside English, the rhythm, the tone, the flow that make words feel alive. When he finishes writing, he stands up and continues walking through the park. And soon he sees someone he didn't expect, an elderly man sitting at a small table with a stack of books beside him. This man is Mr. Hale, a retired teacher who used to teach public speaking many years ago. Aaron recognizes him instantly because he used to see him around the neighborhood, always reading, always observing, always smiling as if he knew some secret about life that others didn't. Aaron decides to walk toward him, unsure if the man will remember him, but when Mr. Hale looks up, his eyes light up kindly, and he says Aaron's name as if they had spoken only yesterday. They talk for a few minutes, catching up, and then Aaron asks him a question he has been carrying quietly in his heart. How do people learn to speak in a persuasive way? Mr. Hale closes one of his books, folds his hands on the table, and says, "Persuasion begins where trust begins. And trust begins where honesty begins." These words float into Aaron's mind like warm sunlight. And Mr. Hale continues, speaking gently, most people think persuasion is about speaking well. It is not. Persuasion is about making people feel safe while they listen to you. When a listener feels safe, open, and respected, Your words can enter their heart. But when a listener feels pressured or rushed, even the best words cannot reach them. As Aaron listens, he feels something inside him open again. He thinks about all the times he tried to speak quickly to avoid mistakes, all the times he tried to use complex words to sound smarter, all the times he tried to impress people instead of connecting with them. And he realizes now that he was moving too fast, speaking too sharply, trying too hard. Persuasion, he learns, is slow, calm, clear. A conversation, not a performance. Mr. Hale then asks him to sit and practice a simple exercise. He tells Aaron to explain his presentation idea again, but this time in 3 steps: slow breathing, simple language, steady rhythm. Aaron takes a breath and begins. At first it feels strange, too slow, too gentle, but then something interesting happens. The more he slows down, the more confident he feels. The more he breathes, the more clear his thoughts become. The more he uses simple English, the more his message shines. And when he finishes, Mr. Hale smiles warmly and says, "Do you hear it?" Aaron nods slowly. He does. He hears the music of his own voice for the first time. And maybe you hear it too in your own mind. Maybe you begin to imagine yourself speaking English slowly, calmly, with rhythm and warmth. Maybe you begin to hear your own voice as something strong, something clear, something capable of persuasion. And that is the purpose of this story, to guide you gently to that realization. After thanking Mr. Hale, Aaron continues walking, feeling lighter, his mind alive with new understanding. He walks through the busy streets again, but now the sounds feel different. He hears the flow of conversations like waves moving in and out. He hears pauses like small breaths of meaning. He hears laughter as soft music. And he thinks, this is it. This is what persuasive English feels like. Not complicated. Not dramatic. Just clear, warm flow. He returns home later in the afternoon, opens his notebook again, and begins writing everything he learned today: rhythm, tone, breath, honesty, connection. And as the light from the window moves slowly across his desk, he practices speaking again, softly, gently, with intention. He practices one idea at a time, focusing not on being perfect, but on being clear. And for the first time, he enjoys the sound of his own voice. He enjoys the feeling of speaking without rushing. He enjoys the calm that comes with slow, steady English. And as the sun begins to set, painting the sky with soft orange and pink, he closes his notebook and whispers to himself, "I am learning. I am growing. I can do this." And maybe whisper that too now, because this journey is your journey as well. This story is not only about Aaron, it is about you finding the hidden music in your English, the gentle rhythm that makes your speaking persuasive, natural, and warm. And tomorrow, the story will go even deeper, guiding you step by step into the emotional power of your voice and teaching you how persuasion grows when your message and your heart move together. The next day begins with a soft rain falling outside Aaron's window, the kind of gentle rain that makes everything quiet and calm, and when he wakes up, he lies in bed for a moment listening to the steady sound of the drops tapping against the glass, each one creating a rhythmic little beat, almost like the soft metronome of a musician, and as he listens to it, he thinks about the idea that had been growing inside him for the past 2 days, the idea that persuasion is not only about speaking clearly, but about creating a feeling, a flow, a sense of calm and trust between the speaker and the listener. He stretches slowly, sits up, and looks around his room, feeling thankful for the peaceful start to the day. The world outside is gray, but the quietness makes him feel safe, almost as if the rain is telling him to slow down, to breathe, to reflect. So he gets up, makes a warm cup of tea, and sits by the window with his notebook on his lap. He opens it to the last page he wrote and reads his notes. Rhythm, breath, tone, honesty, connection. These words feel alive now, more meaningful than ever, but he senses there is still something missing, something deeper, something important that he has not fully understood yet, and he knows that today, he needs to discover what that missing piece is. As he sips his tea slowly, he remembers something Mr. Hale once told him in a brief conversation years ago. He had said, "The most persuasive speakers are not the ones who speak the best. They're the ones who feel the most." At the time, Aaron did not understand it. He thought speaking was only about technique, about structure, about knowing what to say and how to say it. But now, after everything he has been learning, he begins to realize that persuasion has a deeper foundation: emotion. Not dramatic emotion, not loud emotion, but real emotion, honest emotion, the kind that rises naturally from inside and touches the listener gently like warm light. He closes his eyes and tries to understand this more fully. What does emotional speaking feel like? What does it sound like? And then he realizes the answer is simple. Emotional speaking feels human. It feels alive. It feels sincere. You can hear the heart inside the voice. And he wonders if he has ever spoken that way before, not just in English, but in any language. He wonders if he has ever allowed his real feelings to flow through his voice instead of hiding them behind careful words. This thought pushes him to stand up and begin getting ready for the day. He feels that something important is waiting for him outside, something he needs to experience to understand this emotional side of persuasion. So he puts on his jacket, grabs his notebook, and steps out into the rainy street. The sound of the rain hitting the ground mixes with the soft rumble of passing cars, and the air feels cool on his skin. He pulls his hood over his head and walks slowly, letting the world's quiet mood guide his thoughts. As he walks, he passes by a small bookstore he has seen many times but never entered. Today, something draws him to it. The warm lights inside glow softly through the rain-streaked window, and when he steps inside, the smell of old paper and wooden shelves surrounds him, creating a comforting space. The shop is nearly empty except for one person, a young woman standing near the back, reading a book with intense focus, her face calm but full of emotion. Aaron walks slowly through the aisles, brushing his fingers across the spines of the books, and he feels the weight of the stories around him, each one written with emotion, each one full of someone's heart and experience. And suddenly he realizes something powerful. Persuasion is storytelling. Not in the sense of writing a story, but in the sense of speaking with feeling, speaking with meaning, speaking with a sense of truth that pulls the listener gently into your experience. He takes a deep breath and continues walking until he reaches the back of the store, where an old man sits behind the counter reading a newspaper. The man looks up and greets him with a warm, calm smile. His voice is soft, slow, filled with a natural kindness that immediately makes Aaron feel at ease. And it is in that moment Aaron understands something important. Tone is emotion. You can hear emotion in the speed, in the softness, in the pauses. And the old man's tone feels like a warm blanket wrapped around a cold morning. Aaron asks the man if he has any books on public speaking or communication, and the man points to a small section near the front. But before Aaron can walk away, the man says something unexpected. "You don't need a book to learn how to speak well," he says softly. "You need to learn how to feel while you speak." Aaron stops, surprised by the directness of the comment. He asks what the man means, and the man puts down his newspaper, folds his hands on the counter, and says, "People listen when they feel you care. They listen when they feel your message matters to you. But most people speak from their mind, not their heart. They say their words, but they don't feel them." Aaron feels these words in his chest. They strike something deep, something he has always known but never heard clearly before. And the old man continues, if you want to persuade, you must speak from the place inside you where your truth lives. Speak from meaning, not from fear. Speak slowly enough that your feelings can breathe. And speak honestly enough that your listener can feel what you feel. For a moment, Aaron stands there, unable to speak, absorbing the quiet wisdom that fills the room like a soft light. He thinks about his upcoming presentation, about how much he cares about his project, how much he wants people to understand it, but how little he has allowed himself to express the emotion behind it. He realizes he has been hiding his feelings, trying to sound professional, trying to sound smart, trying to sound perfect. But perfection does not persuade. Emotion does. When he finally speaks, he asks the man how he can learn to speak with more emotion. The old man chuckles softly and says, you don't learn it. You uncover it. And when Aaron looks confused, the man explains, you already have emotion inside you. You just need to allow it into your voice. Then he tells Aaron to try a simple exercise, say the most important sentence from your presentation out loud. But before you say it, think about why it matters to you. Think about the people who will benefit. Think about the real reason you care. And then speak. Aaron hesitates at first, but then he takes a breath, puts his hand on his chest, and thinks about everything he believes in the project he will present. He thinks about the people it might help. He thinks about the excitement he felt when he first created the idea. He thinks about the hope he had when he imagined sharing it with others. And then, softly, he speaks his main sentence. His voice comes out warm, calm, full of gentle feeling, and even he is surprised at the difference. The old man smiles and says, there. That is persuasive English. And for the first time, Aaron truly feels it in his bones. He thanks the man sincerely, buys a small notebook from the front of the shop, and steps back into the rain feeling different, quieter inside, but stronger somehow, as if he has unlocked a new part of himself. He begins walking home slowly, letting the lessons of the day settle inside him like warm tea. He thinks about emotion, how simple it is, how natural, how powerful, and he begins to understand that persuasive speaking is not about trying to create emotion through complicated words, but about letting the natural emotion behind your message guide the way you speak. As he walks, he whispers sentences to himself, paying attention to how they feel, how they sound, how the tone changes when he speaks with real meaning instead of speaking automatically. He realizes that when he speaks emotionally, his voice becomes slower, softer, more natural. It becomes more persuasive not because he is trying harder, but because he is being more honest. And he thinks, maybe this is the missing piece I have been searching for. When he arrives home, the rain is still falling softly. He takes off his jacket, places it on the chair, and sits at his desk with both notebooks open. He writes everything he learned today. Persuasion is storytelling. Emotion is clarity. Tone carries truth. His handwriting is slow, thoughtful, steady. He then stands in front of the mirror again, just like he did the day before, and decides to practice his speech once more. He takes a deep breath, puts one hand on his chest, and feels his heartbeat. He lets one clear idea rise inside him. And then he speaks. This time his voice feels alive. It feels like it has color, warmth, softness. It feels like the emotion within him is pouring gently into the words, and when he finishes, he feels a small wave of pride moving through him. For the first time, he believes he can truly persuade. He sits down again and reflects on everything, and as the rain begins to slow outside, he realizes something important. Persuasive English grows from the inside out. It does not begin with words. It begins with feelings. It begins with understanding yourself, understanding your message, understanding why you care. And then the words follow naturally, softly, clearly. And as he closes his notebook for the day, He whispers to himself a quiet truth he now believes deeply. When the heart speaks, the voice becomes powerful. And maybe you feel that truth too, right now, in your own heart. Because this journey is slowly teaching you that English is not only a language you learn, it is a voice you uncover. And tomorrow, your journey and Aaron's journey will continue deeper, guiding you into the structure and shape of persuasion, into the art of guiding listeners from one idea to the next with clarity, confidence, and emotional flow. The next morning arrives with brighter light than the day before, and when Aaron opens his eyes, he feels a gentle excitement he hasn't felt in a long time, as if the world is slowly revealing pieces of a puzzle that he has been trying to understand for years. And now those pieces are beginning to fit. He sits up in bed, breathes deeply, and listens to the soft hum of life outside, wind brushing against leaves, a car passing slowly on the quiet road, someone talking on their phone as they walk down the sidewalk. The sounds feel comforting, steady, almost inviting, and he realizes that every sound he hears can teach him something about speaking, about flow, about rhythm. As he stands up and starts his morning routine, he feels a small pull inside him, a desire to take his learning further, to go beyond emotion and tone and discover the deeper structure of persuasive communication. Because now he understands something important. Persuasion has a heart, but it also has a shape. Emotion creates connection, but structure creates clarity. And without clarity, even the warmest message cannot guide a listener to understanding. So after breakfast, he takes his notebook and steps outside. The sky is wide and blue today, and the breeze carries the soft scent of early flowers from nearby gardens. He walks slowly, letting his thoughts move freely as he heads toward a place he hasn't visited in a while, the public library. It is a tall, old building with stone steps and large wooden doors that creak a little when they open, and as he approaches, he feels a familiar calmness settle in his chest. Libraries have always made him feel safe, as if the quiet inside them holds answers to questions he has not yet learned how to ask. When he enters, the cool air and the gentle smell of books wrap around him like a peaceful blanket. He walks between the tall shelves, reading titles in silence, letting his fingers move softly across the spines of the books as if they might whisper their wisdom to him. He soon finds a table near the window, sits down, and opens his notebook. He writes the word structure at the top of the page and then looks up, thinking deeply. Emotion helps people feel your message, he thinks, but structure helps people follow your message. And suddenly he remembers something Maya once said to him in the cafe. People understand you when you guide them, not when you push them. And this sentence becomes the light that leads his thoughts. He begins to write about the natural shape of persuasion, not as a strict formula, but as a gentle flow from one idea to the next, something like a path through a forest, where each step leads smoothly into the next one. He writes that a persuasive message begins with a simple truth. The listener must know where they are going. And so, he thinks, the first part of persuasive speaking is context, setting the scene gently, clearly, simply. If the listener knows where they are starting, they can trust the speaker to guide them forward. As he is writing, an older woman with glasses and silver hair sits down across from him, holding a stack of books against her chest. She smiles at him kindly, and he smiles back. She seems familiar, though he cannot remember where he has seen her before. After a moment of silence, she asks him in a gentle voice what he is working on, and he hesitates, unsure if he should explain. But something about her calm and patient presence makes him feel comfortable, so he tells her he is learning how to speak more persuasively, especially for an upcoming presentation that means a lot to him. The woman nods slowly, as if she completely understands, and then says, "People think persuasion is magic. But really, it's just direction." He looks at her, curious, and she continues, "Every message is a journey. The speaker shows the path. The listener chooses to walk. Your job is to make the path clear, gentle, and meaningful." Her words feel like warm sunlight shining into his mind, and he asks her how he can make the path clear. She places her books on the table and begins to explain in a slow, steady voice that persuasion follows a simple shape. First, you open the door. Then, you show the room. Then, you guide the person to the chair where they can sit and understand. Erin smiles at the metaphor, and she explains the meaning behind it. Opening the door, she says, is creating a hook. Something simple and natural that grabs attention without pressure. Showing the room is explaining the context, where things are, what they mean, why they matter. Guiding the listener to the chair is leading them to the main idea gently, step by step, in a way that feels natural, not rushed. And once they feel comfortable, you can offer your message clearly, warmly, honestly. "This is the structure of persuasion," she says softly. "A welcoming beginning, a clear journey, and a meaningful point." Erin takes notes quickly, trying to capture every word she says, but the woman notices and tells him gently, "Slow down. Persuasion is slow. Writing about persuasion should be slow too." He nods, breathes, and writes more calmly. She then tells him about the power of transitions, the small bridges between ideas that help listeners stay with you. She explains that transitions are like stepping stones in a river. If they are too far apart, the listener falls into confusion. If they are too close, the journey feels too long. But if they are spaced just right, the listener crosses easily. And he realizes that transitions are not complicated. They are simple phrases like, "Let me show you why," "Here is what I mean," "Now think about this," or "This leads to something important." And he begins to understand that persuasive speaking is not about big words, but about gentle guidance. The woman then explains something even deeper. Persuasive messages must follow emotional logic. This means the order of ideas should feel natural to the heart, not just the mind. People follow meaning before they follow information. If the emotional flow is smooth, the message becomes smooth too. She says that heart logic moves in a simple pattern: curiosity, understanding, agreement, belief. First, you open a question or a feeling inside the listener. Then you help them understand. Then you guide them to see things your way. And finally, you let them feel the truth of your message. This, she says softly, is the inner shape of persuasion. Erin sits silently for a moment, letting everything sink in. He feels as if the missing piece he has been searching for is suddenly glowing brightly right in front of him. The structure of persuasion is not rigid. It is gentle. It is emotional. It is human. And just as he is about to thank her, the woman looks at him warmly and says, "Now show me." He blinks, surprised, and asks what she means. She tells him to explain the beginning of his presentation using the structure she just described: a hook, context, a gentle transition, and a simple main idea. Erin hesitates, nervous but willing to try. He takes a breath, lets his shoulders relax, and begins slowly. He starts with a simple hook, something soft and honest about why he cares. Then he explains the context, keeping his language simple and his voice calm. Then he uses a small transition, guiding her gently toward the purpose of his idea. And finally, he shares his main message with warmth and clarity. When he finishes, he feels his heart beating a little faster, wondering if he did well. But the woman smiles, her eyes soft with approval, and she says, "Beautiful. Now you are shaping your message instead of just saying it." That is persuasion. Her words fill him with a deep sense of pride and relief, and he thanks her sincerely, feeling grateful for her guidance. She picks up her books, stands slowly, and before she leaves the table, she rests her hand lightly on his shoulder and says, "Remember, persuasion is a gentle art. Guide with kindness. Lead with clarity. Speak with warmth. And then she walks away quietly, disappearing into another aisle of the library, leaving him sitting there with a heart full of understanding. He spends the next hour writing everything he learned, shaping his notes into soft, simple ideas he can practice every day. When he finally closes his notebook and steps outside, the sky is even brighter, and he feels lighter, clearer, more grounded. He walks home slowly, repeating the structure in his mind: hook, context, transition, message. He whispers it softly as he walks: hook, context, transition, message. And he feels the flow becoming natural inside him, as if the rhythm of persuasion is beginning to live in his voice. When he reaches home, he stands once again in front of his mirror, takes a breath, and practices the opening of his presentation. This time the words do not feel rushed or uncertain. They feel shaped. They feel guided. They feel persuasive. And as he finishes speaking, he smiles softly, feeling the quiet confidence that grows when understanding becomes real. He sits down, closes his eyes, and reflects on everything he learned today. Structure is not restriction. Structure is freedom. It gives his ideas a place to live, a way to move, a path to follow. And now, with emotion in his voice and shape in his words, he feels ready to take the next step in his journey. The next morning feels different for Aaron, not because the weather has changed or because something dramatic has happened, but because he wakes up with a new sense of direction. A quiet confidence growing slowly inside him, like a small flame becoming stronger with each breath. He sits on the edge of his bed, feeling the soft morning light touching his face through the thin curtains, and as he stretches his arms, he thinks about everything he has learned over the past few days, about rhythm, about tone, about emotion, about structure. And he realizes that today is the day he must take all of these lessons into the real world. Because learning persuasion in your mind, he thinks, is only the first step. The real growth happens when you use your voice, when you speak to real people, when you try and fail and try again until your voice feels natural and alive. So he gets ready slowly, brushing his teeth, washing his face, making a warm cup of tea, and each movement feels intentional, steady, almost like a warm-up for his voice and his mind. When he finally steps outside, the sky is clear, the morning air is crisp, and a gentle wind moves through the leaves of the trees lining the street. He begins walking with no specific destination, letting his steps guide him freely, because he knows that somewhere out there is a moment waiting for him to practice what he has learned. As he walks, he repeats the structure quietly to himself: hook, context, transition, message. Then he repeats the deeper lessons too: slow rhythm, soft tone, honest emotion. He feels these ideas mixing inside him, forming a kind of quiet strength. After some time, he finds himself near a small open-air market, a place full of life and movement. Vendors calling out, customers laughing, children running between stalls, the smell of fresh fruit and warm bread filling the air. He hesitates for a moment, wondering if this is the right place to practice persuasion, but then he realizes that persuasion is not only for presentations or speeches, it lives in everyday conversations too. So he steps into the market, walking slowly between the colorful stalls, observing everything around him. As he passes a small fruit stand, he hears two customers discussing something with the vendor. One customer is trying to convince the other to try a new kind of fruit, speaking with excitement and warmth, using simple English but with so much feeling. The listener smiles, nods, and eventually agrees. And Aaron sees persuasion in action: natural, effortless, friendly persuasion. He continues walking and soon stops near a stand selling handmade wooden crafts. The vendor, a man with kind eyes and a soft smile, is explaining one of his carvings to a young woman. His voice is gentle, his sentences slow, and each word carries honest passion for the work he does. Aaron listens carefully, noticing how the vendor uses emotion to connect, structure to guide, and tone to comfort. The young woman buys the carving, moved by the vendor's calm explanation. And Aaron realizes that the real world is full of persuasion, not in big speeches, but in warm conversations, in moments where people share something they care about. Feeling inspired, he decides to practice a small persuasive conversation himself. He notices a stand selling homemade candles, each one decorated beautifully with dried flowers and soft colors. Behind the stand is a young man arranging the candles neatly. Aaron walks up slowly, smiles politely, and asks how the candles are made. The young vendor lights up with enthusiasm and begins explaining, but after a few sentences, he pauses and asks Aaron what he thinks about scents like lavender or eucalyptus. And suddenly, Aaron has the chance to practice. He breathes lightly, relaxes his shoulders, and speaks gently, using everything he has learned. He starts with a small hook, a simple statement about how certain scents make him feel calm. Then he gives context about why he likes natural, clean fragrances. He transitions softly into the idea that lavender might be a good scent for someone who wants peace at home. And finally, he shares his message, that he believes the vendor's lavender candle could help people relax after a long day. The vendor smiles warmly, nodding with genuine interest, and says, "You explain things very clearly." And in that moment, Aaron feels something shift inside him, something warm and proud, as if the world is telling him he is on the right path. He spends the next hour walking through the market, observing conversations, practicing short exchanges, testing his voice gently in real situations. He helps an elderly woman find a stall she is looking for, explaining the directions slowly and clearly. He chats briefly with a man selling fresh vegetables, practicing calm tone and simple rhythm. He even compliments a street musician on his beautiful playing, using warm emotion in his voice. Each conversation feels like a small step in his journey, a real-world lesson that makes the ideas from his notebook come alive. And with each step, he grows a little more confident, a little more comfortable, a little more connected to the flow of persuasion in everyday life. After leaving the market, Aaron walks toward a nearby park where he sees a group of people gathered around a woman giving a small outdoor workshop. The woman stands in the center, speaking with a strong but warm voice, explaining something about creative writing. Aaron stops to watch and listen. Her speech is simple, clear, filled with emotion, and beautifully structured. She opens with a gentle hook, a short story from her childhood. Then she gives context about why writing matters to her. She transitions smoothly into her main idea, guiding her listeners step by step. And her message is spoken with such honesty that everyone around her seems deeply engaged. Aaron realizes that she is using all the skills he has been learning, and seeing it in a real-world setting strengthens his understanding even more. He stands there for several minutes, listening closely, absorbing the flow of her speech like a student absorbing sunlight. And when she finishes, the crowd applauds softly, and Aaron feels inspired again, ready to practice more. He walks deeper into the park and finds a quiet bench beneath a tall tree. The leaves above him create soft patterns of shade on the ground, and the sound of distant laughter from children playing nearby mixes with the gentle breeze. He opens his notebook and begins writing about everything he has learned today. He writes about real conversations, about observing people, about seeing persuasion happen naturally. He writes about the candle vendor, about the vegetable stand, about the elderly woman, about the street musician. Each experience teaches him something different about persuasion. He writes that persuasion is not only technique, it is presence. It is being calm enough to notice others. It is being kind enough to guide them gently. It is being clear enough to help them feel safe. As he is writing, a familiar voice calls out his name. He looks up and sees Maya walking toward him with a warm smile on her face. She sits beside him on the bench, and they share a soft laugh about finding each other in the same place. She asks how his practice is going, and he tells her everything he has learned today. She listens carefully, nodding, her eyes full of quiet pride. When he finishes, she says, "That's wonderful. But now you must practice something harder." He raises his eyebrows, curious, but slightly nervous. She explains that persuasion in the real world is not only about speaking to strangers in simple conversations. Sometimes the hardest persuasion is speaking to people you know, people whose opinions matter to you, people who know your fears, your weaknesses, your habits. So she asks him to persuade her about something simple. It could be anything: a movie she should watch, a place she should visit, a book she should read. At first, Aaron hesitates. Persuading strangers felt safe because they knew nothing about him. Persuading Maya feels different. But he breathes deeply, reminds himself of everything he learned, and chooses a topic he truly cares about. He decides to persuade her to visit a small art exhibit happening the next day, an exhibit he believes she will enjoy deeply. He starts with a soft hook, describing a feeling he had when he first saw the paintings. Then he explains the context, telling her about the artist and the meaning behind the exhibit. He transitions gently, connecting the art to something Maya once said about creativity. And finally, he shares his message warmly, that he believes she will find something beautiful and meaningful there. Maya listens closely, and when he finishes, she smiles and says, "You're getting good at this." And her words feel like a warm wave washing over him. She agrees to visit the exhibit, not because he pressured her, not because he used complicated language, but because he spoke with honesty, clarity, and emotion. And in that moment, Aaron feels his confidence grow even more. They talk for a few more minutes, laughing softly, sharing stories about their week, and then Maya stands up and gives him a gentle pat on the shoulder before leaving. After she walks away, Aaron sits in silence, letting everything sink in. He looks around the park, watching the world move in its gentle rhythm, the breeze, the laughter, the conversation, the sunlight. He thinks about how persuasion lives in these simple moments, how it breathes through connection, structure, rhythm, and emotion. And he begins to understand something deeper. Persuasion is not about speaking to many people. It is about speaking meaningfully to one person at a time. It is not about winning. It is about sharing. It is not about impressing. It is about expressing. And this realization feels like a soft but powerful light rising inside him. As the afternoon sun begins to lower, Aaron walks home slowly, his notebook tucked under his arm, his heart full of quiet pride. When he reaches home, he practices his presentation again in front of the mirror. This time his voice feels grounded, steady, alive. It feels like his message is not only in his mind, but in his heart. He finishes speaking, looks at his reflection, and smiles softly. He is not finished learning, not yet, but he is growing. He is transforming. And tomorrow, his journey will continue as he comes closer to the moment he has been preparing for, the day of his presentation, the day he brings everything together, the day he steps into his voice fully and confidently. The morning of the presentation arrives much sooner than Aaron expected, and when he opens his eyes, he lies still for a moment, listening to the soft quiet of his room, feeling the air touching his skin gently, feeling his heartbeat moving with slow, steady rhythm, and realizing that this is the day everything he has been learning finally comes together. A small part of him feels nervous, of course, the kind of nervousness that touches the stomach lightly like a feather, but there is also something new inside him, something calm, something grounded, something deeply peaceful. He sits up slowly, places his feet on the cool floor, and breathes deeply, remembering every lesson from the past week. Persuasion is rhythm. Persuasion is tone. Persuasion is emotion. Persuasion is structure. Persuasion is connection. He whispers these words softly into the morning air, and they feel like old friends now, familiar and comforting. After getting out of bed, he walks to the mirror and looks at his reflection. He sees the same face, the same eyes, the same person he has always been, but today he sees something different too. He sees a kind of quiet confidence that has grown slowly like a seed becoming a tree. It is not loud, not dramatic, but it is strong. It is steady. And it lives inside his voice. He gets ready carefully, taking his time, choosing simple clothes that make him feel comfortable and calm. He makes a warm cup of tea and sits near the window while the sunlight begins to fill the room. He opens his notebook one last time, reading through the words he wrote across the days, words filled with meaning, lessons written in gentle handwriting, thoughts about persuasion, connection, and the softness of honest communication. And as he reads, he feels himself smiling, not because everything is perfect, but because he can see how far he has come. He thinks about the quiet cafe where he spoke with Maya, the peaceful park where he listened to the leaves and the voices of people passing by, the warm library where the woman guided him gently into understanding structure, the small market where he practiced speaking in real-world conversations, and the bookstore where the old man taught him the power of emotion. Every moment brought him here. Every lesson shaped his voice. And now the world is waiting for him to step onto the small stage of his presentation and share something he truly believes in. As he finishes his tea, he stands, takes one last deep breath, and walks out of his home. The air outside feels fresh and alive, the gentle breeze moving through the trees like soft whispers of encouragement. He walks down the street slowly, feeling the rhythm of his steps matching the rhythm of his breath, and every movement feels intentional, calm, steady. On his way to the office, he passes the cafe where he met Maya, and through the window he sees her sitting at her usual spot, reading a book. She looks up at the exact moment he passes, as if she can sense him, and she smiles warmly. He walks inside for a moment, and she closes her book gently. "Today is the day," she says softly, and he nods, feeling warmth spread through his chest. She looks into his eyes with quiet understanding and tells him, "Remember, people are not listening for perfection. They are listening for you." And those words, simple and soft, feel like the perfect final lesson. He thanks her, takes a small sip of the warm tea she bought him, and leaves the cafe with a heart full of gratitude. When he arrives at the office building, he pauses at the entrance, feeling the weight of the moment. Inside these walls, his voice will meet the real world. Inside these walls, he will test everything he has learned. He steps through the door, walks up the stairs, and arrives at the meeting room where the presentation will take place. The door is slightly open, and inside he can hear soft laughter, papers moving, chairs sliding. People are gathering slowly. He steps in, and several colleagues greet him warmly. The room is simple, just a long table, a screen, a few chairs, but today it feels like a stage, a place where his voice will finally learn how to stand on its own. He sets his notebook on the table, knowing he will not need to read from it, but wanting it near him like a small anchor. As the room fills, he feels the familiar butterflies in his stomach, but they feel different today, less like fear, more like alertness, like the body preparing for something meaningful. His manager, a calm man with a steady smile, stands near the front of the room and taps a pen lightly against his notebook to signal the start of the meeting. "We will begin with Aaron's presentation," he says, and the room quiets gently. Aaron stands slowly, feeling the weight of every eye turning toward him, but he breathes deeply. remembers the rhythm, the tone, the emotion, the structure, and steps forward. He walks to the front with slow, steady steps, places his notebook gently on the podium, looks up, and for one long moment, he simply breathes. The silence is not heavy. It is warm. It is welcoming. Ahe starts with a hook, something simple and emotional, something honest. He tells a short story about the first moment he imagined his project, a moment that filled him with hope and excitement. His voice is soft but clear, slow but warm. His rhythm is steady, his tone natural, and he notices the listeners leaning in gently, their faces calm, their eyes focused on him. Then he moves into context, explaining the problem his project addresses, using simple English, simple sentences, simple images that help everyone understand. He is not trying to impress them, he is guiding them. He uses soft transitions like small bridges. Let me show you why. Now imagine this. Here's the important part, and each one leads the listeners deeper into the meaning of his message. His voice feels different today. It feels stronger, not because it is louder, but because it is calmer. The emotion inside him shapes his tone, giving it warmth and depth that he did not have before. He watches the room carefully, noticing nods, small smiles, soft eyes. People are connecting with him. Then he reaches the heart of his message. This is the part he cares about most, the part that once made him nervous, the part he used to fear speaking aloud. But today, he steps into it gently, with warmth and clarity. He places one hand lightly on his chest, not dramatically but naturally, and he lets the emotion rise softly inside him. He uses slow rhythm, honest tone, open expression. His words are simple but full of meaning. He does not rush. He does not hide. He does not try to sound perfect. He speaks from his heart. And when he finally shares the key idea of his project, the main message he has been preparing for days, the room is silent in the best way possible, silent because people are listening deeply. As he continues, he adds examples, small stories, gentle explanations to support his message. He remembers the gentle voice of the old man in the bookstore, the calm structure taught by the woman in the library, the emotional clarity Maya encouraged in him, and he feels all their lessons living in his voice now. He can feel his confidence growing, not like a sudden wave, but like a soft, steady tide rising quietly along the shore. And when he reaches the final part of his presentation, he slows down even more, knowing that endings matter. He reflects on everything with sincerity, offering a simple takeaway that ties the whole message together. And when he finishes speaking, he lets a soft silence rest in the room. Not because he forgot what to say, but because silence can also persuade. Silence can let the message breathe. Then, finally, he smiles gently, closes his notebook, and says, "Thank you." The room stays quiet for a heartbeat, and then applause begins, soft at first, then stronger, warm, and genuine. His manager smiles with a sense of quiet pride and says, "That was beautifully done, Aaron." One colleague walks up and tells him she felt touched by the story he shared in the beginning. Another says his explanation was the clearest he had ever heard. Someone else says his calm tone helped them understand the project better than any document had before. And in that moment, Aaron feels something he has been searching for his entire life, the sense that his voice matters, that his voice can move people, that his voice can guide, connect, and persuade. After the meeting ends, he steps outside the building, walking slowly into the warm sunlight. The air feels different now, almost lighter, as if the world is smiling softly at him. He sits on a small bench near the road, opens his notebook, and writes one sentence, "Today, my voice became real." And as he writes those words, he feels something settle gently inside him. Persuasion is not something he learned in a few days. It is something he uncovered. It was always inside him, inside his breath, inside his heart, inside his simple way of speaking, but it needed time, guidance, and practice to come alive. And the same is true for you. Your voice is already inside you. Persuasive English is not a skill you borrow from someone else. It is a voice you uncover piece by piece, breath by breath, story by story. Aaron stands again and begins walking home, feeling the rhythm of his steps matching the calm rhythm of his heart. As he walks, he thinks about everything he has learned, everything he has practiced, everything he has experienced. And he realizes that persuasion is not about winning. It is about sharing. It is not about control. It is about connection. It is not about speaking perfectly. It is about speaking truthfully. And he promises himself that from this day forward, he will speak with rhythm, with tone, with structure, with emotion, but most importantly, with honesty. And as he reaches his home, opens the door, and steps inside, he feels a gentle sense of pride moving through him like a warm wave. He whispers softly to himself, "I can speak. I can persuade. I can connect." And those words feel like the beginning of a new chapter in his life, not the end of his journey, but the start of a deeper, stronger voice. He begins. And now, as you listen to the last part of this story, you begin to understand that Aaron's journey is also your journey. You begin to feel that persuasion is not something outside of you, it is something inside you, waiting to be awakened. And with every breath you take, with every sentence you speak, with every moment you choose calm over fear, your voice becomes clearer, warmer, more confident. And when you speak next with someone you love, with a colleague, with a stranger, or even with yourself, you will remember that your voice has a rhythm, your voice has a heart, your voice has a message. And when you speak from those places gently and honestly, you will discover the same truth Aaron discovered today, that your voice is enough, and your voice can persuade with kindness, clarity, and warmth.